This is Gilbert Gottfried, and this is Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast with my co-host Frank Santopadre, and we're once again recording at Nutmeg with our engineer Frank Verderosa. Our guest this week is a comedian, actor, and world-famous ventriloquist, and one of the most popular and enduring entertainers of the last 50 years. Appearing on TV and in films, headlining in nightclubs and Vegas hotels, and even recording a hit comedy album entitled Hello, Dummy. You also know his work from movies like Coming Home and Americathon, TV game shows such as Match Game and Hollywood Squares, and dozens of sitcoms, talk shows, and variety shows, including Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, The Flip Wilson Show, Sammy and Company, The Merv Griffin Show, The Jeffersons, The Hollywood Palace, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Late Show with David Letterman, to name a few. As the host and MC of Motown Records' long-running Motortown Review, he helped introduce the world to future music legends Smokey Robinson, Diana Ross, The Supremes, The Four Tops, Marvin Gaye, and Stevie Wonder. And he would go on to work with and alongside icons like the Jacksons, Sammy Davis Jr., Jane Fonda, Steve Allen, Flip Wilson, Lily Tomlin, Muhammad Ali, and John Wayne. Please welcome to the podcast a man whose long and successful showbiz journey began with an ad for ventriloquism school in Popular Mechanics magazine. The fabulous Willie Tyler and Lester.
Don't forget Lester.
Wow. Well, no, he's on the way. He's out.
He's stuck in traffic.
He's got his skateboard is outside someplace. He's trying to find a place to put it.
You like that intro?
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of stuff there. As you were saying, as you were talking, it reminds me. It reminded me.
Oh, what?
That reminded me of all that stuff as you were talking.
Yeah, you've done a lot of stuff, Willie.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that.
And we worked together, and I can't for the life of me. Well, we didn't actually work together. We both appeared on one show.
Yeah, we were in a room together, doing something, waiting for something. I remember that well.
Yeah, we were at read-through, and we said hello, and first thing I said to you is, "Where's Lester?" and you pointed to a box on the floor, and I remember thinking, what a scumbag this Willie Tyler is. That he puts Lester in a box.
No, he's a hermit. He's a hermit.
But you didn't even punch air holes.
He's used to that kind of stuff.
Oh, and my son,
those little wooden guys.
My son, 8 years old, wants to say hello to you.
Oh, he met him at Chiller.
Yeah, I met him. Yeah, I met him there.
Yeah, Dara was at Chiller Fest in New Jersey, and Willie was signing autographs, and Dara walked over there with Max.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was signing autographs for Lester, too, because I have power of attorney.
Oh, very smart.
Yeah.
But you can't figure out what you guys worked on together. Hang on. The phone's going off, Willie.
That's all right.
For the life of me, I just remember sitting in a read-through.
What if we went through all of Willie's credits on IMDb and maybe something will jog your memory?
I'm trying to think. He either had to be here out in L.A. or New York, but
my guess it was L.A.
The only two places.
But is Willie familiar with the ventriloquist act that you and Belzer used to do?
Oh, yeah. I used to. Me and Richard Belzer used to do a ventriloquist act called Dick and Stinky. and I'd sit on Richard's lap, and he'd go, "Hey, welcome to the show, Stinky," and I'd go, "This audience can go fuck themselves."
It was a blue ventriloquism act.
Oh boy. You know what? Basically, in my act, 9 out of 10 times it's like we don't even do expletives. But you know what happens? The reason why we won't say that the F word. The reason why I can't say the F word because my lips will move.
Oh,
wow, that's
God.
great. That's great.
You ever try to say that? You say it without moving your lips?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's difficult.
So do you try to take all F words, all words that start with F, out of the?
No, but it's
out
just
of the
that
bit?
just
that
that
one.
particular word. That's a strange that's a strange sounding word.
Interesting.
So as
without moving your lips.
So the only reason you don't say fuck in your act is
because the lips move. Yeah.
It didn't stop Otto and George.
Yeah.
So tell us, Gilbert alluded to it in the intro, Willie, but tell us about, I found this fascinating, the ventriloquism school in Michigan.
Yeah, what you were just reading Popular Mechanics, or how did this come up?
No, I started trying to fool around with it when I was about 10 years old. But I was in school one day, elementary school, and in the library they had a magazine, Popular Mechanics magazine. Mm-hmm. And in that Popular Mechanics magazine, they had an ad. An ad was in the back of the magazine. It said, "Learn ventriloquism." And this particular school, correspondence school, was just outside of Detroit in Grosse Pointe Woods. You know, that's where Ford, the guy that built all the cars, that's where, you know, it's a very affluent area. But anyway, it's like my teacher one day, we drove out to the school, to the correspondence school. We drove out there, and the lady, Madeline Mayer, I talked to her, and I got a correspondence course. For $35, I got a correspondence course and a little thing called a ventrilo aid. You know, it was a little plastic thing. I know, you put it in your mouth, and then you say exercises with it. You know, they made it up. You know,
I love it.
Yeah, so I got that, and then I got I got a Jerry Mahoney character. She gave me a Jerry Mahoney character with the course. That was before Lester.
I love it.
Now I heard, was the Jerry Mahoney doll you got then was later painted black?
No. She painted him.
She painted
him for you.
No, because she made she had a mail order situation where she sold figures to people all over the world. So she made the figures. She made figures up. She painted them and all that kind of stuff. But she wouldn't put the mechanics in. She sent it to somebody in Ohio. They would put the mechanics in, and they would send them back to her. But she, right there, when I went into her house there, out in the little room that she had there, it was outside. It was like a patio. Yeah. That's where she painted all the characters and stuff like that. It was very interesting.
The Fred and Madeline Mayer School of Ventriloquism. And
Fred Mayer School of Ventriloquism.
And you had a black Jerry Mahoney.
Yeah, she painted him brown for me.
And how old were you when you first started taking the course?
I think I was about 12 years old when I first started taking the.
Wow.
It was like we would get correspondence in the mail, and it would be like basically every 2 weeks you get a couple of pages and stuff like that, and she would put little jokes in there too, you know.
Now, what did your parents think?
Well, you know, when I first started doing this, everybody would look at me out of the corner of their eyes. You know, nobody thought, they thought something was not right there.
There was no show business in your family, Willie?
No,
nothing.
No. My dad worked at Ford Motor Company, and my mom never worked. She just stayed home because there was 10 of us. Mm-hmm. There's 10 of us.
Wow.
But my mom left. She just stayed home, took care of the kids. I was growing up. My dad, he was a mechanic, and he worked at the Ford Foundry and all that stuff. And you know, but what happened was, like in Detroit, you're familiar with Showtime at the Apollo, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Now in Detroit, they used to have theaters around the city, and what happened was, like, they would have shows in those theaters, and it was a situation where they would have a Class B movie. They'd show a Class B movie, then they'd have the amateur show. And then after the amateur show, they would have the professional show. But I would be on the amateur show. But man, if you remember seeing the Showtime at the Apollo, and you see the the audience go after the amateurs when they run on the stage. It's bleak. It's really bleak, because they heckle them and all that kind of stuff. That was the same kind of situation I went through. They understood if a guy played a harmonica and he came out on stage, they understood that. A vocal group came out. That was fine. Exotic dancer. We used to call them shake dancers, but exotic
shake
dancer. When they would come out, they understood that. But then when the MC, Homer Jones, I never will forget his name, Homer Jones, because he used to pick me up at the house and drive me there. He was the MC. So anyway, he would introduce me, and I walk out with this little character. Now this is before I got the mayor, the Jerry Mahoney.
Okay.
I made up. I jerry-rigged a character out of my sister's doll. I did one of those MacGyvers.
Took your sister's doll.
Yeah. And I would walk out on stage with this particular thing. It was made up with a rubber band, a straight pin, and a string. It was weird, And as I walked on stage, the audience, they were really boisterous and loud and stuff. And he introduced me, and I walk on stage. You ever seen that? What is that? E.F. Hutton commercial?
Sure.
E.F. Hutton?
Yeah.
Remember
when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
Yes.
No, they got quiet. Yeah, they got quiet. Right? But as I walked out and I cleared the wings and walked on stage, the light hit me. It was like nothing. The people were like they were in shock. Like, what is this? What is this kind of? And then they got over the shock, and then they went through. That's when the heckling started. But it was like when you're a 10 and 12-year-old kid, you kind of go through that, and this kind of, it kind of gets to you. But and at the end, what happened was it was the contest. So at the end, Homer would line up everybody, the MC, and what he would do is put his hand over each contestant or each group, and people would applaud or boo or whatever. Number one, number two, number three. Anyway, when they got to me, it was like a lot of boo, because and I would go home every night and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I didn't want to do this anymore.
Of course.
So what happened was but then 2 weeks later, I did it again. But I kept doing it, and then I start winning. The contest.
For you. How old are you now when you're doing this? 10, 11?
No, it's 10, 11, 12.
Another
13.
guy like you, Gilbert, who got on stage as a kid.
Oh, my God, yeah. First time I got up on stage, I was 15.
Oh, yeah.
Both of you crazy.
Now,
that's good, though.
Didn't you also say you remember, Smokey Robinson getting heckled?
Let's see.
Oh, at the Apollo. You said that was a tough room.
Oh, yeah, no, the Apollo. Well, you're from New York. You ever been to the Apollo?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we used to work there a lot at the Apollo, and the first time that I went there was with when I was with I got with Motown, so we went there with the Motortown Review, and it was a little Stevie Wonder back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And Marvin Gaye and Mary Wells, all those folks, on one show. But when you go to the Apollo, even entertainers who are very professional and they've been around for a long time, when they would go to the Apollo, they would sweat because they never knew if the audience would accept them or not. They could have a million-seller record. They come out there and the audience would heckle them if they didn't like what they were singing. Then that kind of a situation. But it was it was a fun place to be though, to go there because it's like baptism by fire. Kind of situation.
I saw some of the marquees. This is the Motortown Review, and you were the MC. So
right,
it's like you, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, the Marvelettes, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, for $65.
For $65?
To see the whole show. That was the price on the
60. No, did you say 65?
Yeah,
or 6 to 5.
$65. Do I have this wrong?
$65. No, that's a lot of money. 65
How much was
bucks. It? Huh? No, it was $2. $2 or $3.
$2
per person. Yeah.
I'm stunned.
No, that was back in the 60s. 60s, latter 60s, and beginning of the 70s.
Incredible. Yeah, I have to double check what I was looking at.
You could buy a new car back in those days for $6,000. Inflation.
And you back then when you were working these places, well, the Jews, of course, had the Borscht Belt.
And Catskills.
Yeah, Catskills.
And tell us about the black entertainers.
I mean, what venues they work?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the Chitlin Circuit?
Chitlin Circuit.
Well, it was basically the Chitlin Circuit was basically they had some summer resorts, some summer resorts that some of the performers would work, or just in the neighborhood they would have clubs, just predominantly black clubs, and those were the venues that they would work. If they had a record out, they would go there and plug their records and be successful, performing in those particular venues.
You worked with the Funk Brothers and Lloyd Price and people like that.
No, the Funk Brothers were Motown. They did the they did the sessions in Motown, but then they did the documentary. So when they did the documentary, they had the Funk Brothers, and they traveled around the country with other acts performing Motown songs. The Funk Brothers, the drummer was Benny Benjamin, the real Funk brother, and James Jamerson was the bass player. Those two guys, I remember working with them in a little place up in Idlewild, Michigan. It was a black summer resort. Summer resort, but it was black. And Lloyd Price would work up there. A lot of acts would come up there and work for the summer.
Mr. Personality.
Yeah. You got personality. Yeah.
You worked at a lot of strip clubs.
Well, I didn't work a lot of. I remember one that stands out a lot is the one in Detroit. It was called the Brass Rail. And the Brass Rail was like, and I remember a particular dancer. She would work that club a lot. It was like her club. She didn't own it, but everybody would come there to see her. And her name was Lottie the Body. Yeah. And she was great though. She had those little fringes on the back of her butt right there. And when she's doing the show, she'd turn to the audience, and the drummer every time she moved, the fringes would jump, so the drummer would hit the top hat each time she would do that. She would do one time the left cheek, right cheek, right cheek, then both cheeks. She was great at that.
Whatever happened to Lottie the Body?
No, I guess she retired. I guess basically. Yeah.
She got her 401k.
And what were the reasons for hiring the comics? You once explained that.
Yeah, the reason why is because back in those days they had like a live music trio. Now in Detroit they had the Union, so the trio they would work X amount of time a night on stage for the dancers. Then they had to take a break because the Union they had to take a break 3 times a night, 30-minute breaks, 3 times a night. So the comic would go up and fill in the time while they took their break. And it was like it's an interesting thing to go there and work a strip joint. Where the guys come in, some women would be in there, but mostly guys would be in there, and they wanted to see the women. And all of a sudden, you got a comic on stage, trying to tell jokes.
That's rough.
Trying to be funny, yeah. And you'd be on stage, and all of a sudden you hear something fall at your foot, and they would throw a penny. Yeah, you ever been on stage? Ever been on stage when somebody threw a penny or threw a quarter on stage? That's insulting. It's very insulting.
Has that happened to you, Gilbert? Did you ever work with strippers? You never worked with a stripper or an exotic dancer?
One time I did something for the Hustler Club.
Okay.
But I never actually worked a strip club.
No, what's interesting? Oh, another thing too, because it was a strip club, we didn't have a dressing room. We would come dressed, but it's the idea we would be in the room with the strippers. They had a TV in there, it was a TV in there, and then if they wanted to strip, if they wanted to change, they'd go in the back and change. Some would go in the back. Some women would go in the back. If the guy was sitting in there, if the comic was sitting in there, but some women, there's a couple of women, when they came in, they didn't care. You were sitting there. And you would leave, and if they said leave, you would leave. But if they didn't say leave, you sit there, and they would change because they didn't tell you to leave. So you just sat there and you watched it.
You're not going to leave on your own.
No, you wouldn't leave on your own.
I remember when I did this thing at that Hustler nightclub. I wound up sitting there in. I think we were filming something earlier in the day, and I wound up sitting there in the dressing room. Then the strippers started coming in and changing in front of me and walking around naked, and I, of course. I'd still be there.
Yeah, because she didn't say anything, yeah.
If at one point someone said, there's a guy sitting there for the past hour.
With a drool cup.
Yeah. So I was asked if I could leave the dressing room.
Yeah. If you have to be asked, if nobody says anything. But some strippers would be in there, and then when they came in, they would look at me and go, "Willie, do you mind?" Then I'd get up and go out.
Wasn't it a stripper or a dancer, Willie, who touched Lester and broke something on him, and that was the last time you let anybody touch him?
Yeah, it was like one of the being in the dressing room. It's like one stripper was there, and she was a very attractive little stripper. And she would ask. She said, well, "How does he work?" So it's like you're like kind of melting like butter. It's the way she talked to you. Oh boy. So I showed her how he worked. And I didn't really show. I took her hand and sort of showed her how he worked. And so she put her hand on Lester's controls. And what happened was and then she took her hand out. And so it's time for me to go on later. So I go on stage. And I'm on stage, and I'm talking, then Lester's talking, then I look at Lester, and Lester looks at me. And when he looks at me, one eye goes this way, and one eye goes that way. So what happened was she, instead of pulling down on the control, she pushed out on the control, and it broke. Yeah, but I didn't realize that until I got on stage. So I said after that, never again. No,
never let a stripper handle your part, Gilbert.
Now, you went out of your way to meet the legendary ventriloquist Edgar Bergen.
Edgar Bergen, let's see. I lived in Detroit, and there's a place across the river in Windsor, Ontario called the Elmwood Casino. And that was back in the days of, big nightclubs and stuff like that. So he was in town, and I was doing, back in those days, I was doing the Mike Douglas show and the Merv Griffin shows and stuff. So basically, he knew who I was. I mean, I didn't know until I got over there. But I went across through customs and stuff. I had Lester in the trunk, and I was kind of lucky because it was a situation where the customs didn't open the trunk or anything like that to see what was in the trunk. They might have thought I was working or something to that effect. But anyway, I was able to get Lester through there. It was a Wednesday night, and back in those days, the club wasn't really full that night. It was the middle of the week, and back in those days, the middle of the week, the weekends were packed, but the middle of the week was kind of weak. And what that was I watched this show, and he did a very amazing. The show was very good show. Because he had a thing in his act where it was supposed to be raining. And he took a pail and he put it on the floor, and you could hear the water dripping in the pail. Kind of situation. So that was. But after the show, I went to the maitre d'. I says, "Mr. Bergen, is he around?" And he says, "Well, he's right in that room right there." The guy says, "Maitre d' says he's right in that room right there." So I went, and knocked on the door. They were in a little small room. I think he and his wife. And he said, "Come in." I opened the door, and he was in there. They were eating dinner. And I felt kind of bad. I didn't want to disturb people eating dinner.
Sure.
And he looked at me, and he recognized me from the TV shows. He said, "Oh, hey, how you doing? He said, "Come on in." So I went in, and I started talking to him. And then as we talked, he says, "Do you have your character?" And meaning Lester. I said, "Oh yeah, he's in the car." He says, "Bring him in." So I went and got Lester and brought him in. And he wanted me to do a couple of things for him. And as I did it, back in those days, what I would do when Lester talked, he was animated. Lester was animated. But then when he wasn't talking and I was talking, he was like staring out. He was just staring.
Just stationary.
He wasn't even moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then Edgar Bergen says, you know what you're doing wrong? He says, you've got to keep him animated all the time. Even though he's not talking, to make things work, you've got to keep him animated. So basically, I learned that from him. When you see Lester's, even if he's not talking, he's looking at stuff or looking around or looking down and stuff.
I love when he does that little thing where he kind of tilts his head toward you, like get a load of this guy.
Well, yeah. We got that from Paul Winchell. He plays
to the audience.
Yeah, we got that from Paul Winchell. Paul Winchell used to do that with Jerry Mahoney. He's like, get out of here. One of those deals. He used to do that with his little character.
Tell us about Paul Winchell. He was a fascinating.
I think Paul Winchell inspired Willie to do this.
It did, because we had gotten a television set, which was a black and white TV. Back in those days, black and white TVs. And he had a show from New York, coming from New York, and was sponsored. I remember sponsored by Spidell Watch Bands. I remember that was a sponsor.
Wow.
Winchell Mahoney time.
Yep.
Okay.
Scotty Waddy Doo Doo.
Yeah. Hooray. Hurrah.
No,
it's
Scotty.
Winchell Mahoney time. It's Winchell Mahoney time. Let's have some fun. Hooray. Hurrah. We're glad everybody's here. Come on. Let us give a cheer for everyone. Put on your happy faces.
And the kids sang that song.
Yeah, Scotty Waddy Doo Doo. Scotty Waddy Doo Doo. Scotty Waddy Doo Doo.
We are dating ourselves.
I watch that show all the time.
Yeah, it was like I was fascinated on how he made his little character, Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith.
Knucklehead Smith.
Knucklehead Smith spelled his name S-M-I-F-F.
Yes.
Yes, that's just a little trivia.
Paul Winchell did that thing too, where he'd paint a face on his chin.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it was the camera. The camera had to be upside down.
Yeah,
because what happened was like he would paint the eye, an eye here, and an eye here, and then he would
and a little nose.
He put a goatee here, and then he put the body on upside down on his head. But when the camera turned upside down, it looked like a weird looking character. Mm-hmm. But it was just because you could tell when Jerry Mahoney was in the scene. Also, you could tell because when the character was doing one of these deals, had his mouth like this when he was talking for Jerry Mahoney. But Jerry Mahoney was off camera. But that was a very unusual. He was a very ingenious guy. He had something to do with the heart.
He did the artificial heart. Yeah.
And I heard they wanted him to take out a patent on it, and he wasn't concerned with getting credit. He just wanted to invent it.
Yeah, he wanted to invent it because there was something. I guess he knew of a heart surgeon or something to that effect, and he wanted to really help him out.
I think who was that famous heart surgeon?
Michael DeBakey or Christian Barnard?
Christian Barnard.
Okay, Michael DeBakey, I think, was South Africa.
I think
one of them was
Barnard.
One of them was.
That Paul Winchell just wanted to help.
Yeah, he just wanted to help because either that or he had somebody in his family had heart problems or something. There was something personal about it that he wanted to.
He was a brilliant guy. He became, of course, a famous voiceover guy. Dick Dastardly and Muttley and
everything.
All these characters for Hanna-Barbera for years.
Yeah, rubbing bubbles, Scotty, those bubble things.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh,
Scrubbing
my
bubbles.
God, yes.
A million things that are not even coming to mind now, but we'll think of them.
What was the name of that villain?
Did he have a goatee? Did he have a mustache?
He may have.
The villain?
Who? You mean Snidely Whiplash?
There was Snidely Whiplash, and who was another famous
It was
villain?
Dick Dastardly, who I just mentioned.
Okay.
From the Wacky Races.
Yeah. Oh, he was in everything.
Yeah, he did it. Did a real talent.
I heard that Winchell, he was brilliant, but he had a terrible upbringing.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I think what happened. He had some problems with his siblings. With his kids.
He had some. He suffered from depression. I know.
Well, who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't?
And his mother was supposed to be like she was a little psychotic, and that wore on him.
Well, that could be, but when you look at the celebrities nowadays, and if you look at the backstory, it's not rosy.
Especially funny people seem to come from the most damage.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But he was. Go ahead.
No, and entertainers, when they're doing live performances, the ones that do live performances and singers, you notice that they never retire. They never retire unless they have to retire, because there's something you know about this.
Yeah,
something about walking out and somebody introduces you. You walk out on stage, the light hits you, and you hear the applause, and then you start up, and then you get reaction from the audience. That makes you feel good. That's like a high. You feel good about that. Then when you come off, you feel good. And it's like even some nights, if the show didn't go the way you really wanted it to go, like some days when I was growing up, it didn't really go the way I wanted. When you come off about 5 or 6 hours later, you feel good because you did go out. You did go out there and you went through that ritual.
You feel that way, great. Gilbert? Does it energize you?
Yeah. There is that thing, because I always say this, right before I go on, I'm praying that that the manager will come back and say we had a fire or a flood and you can't go on. Here's your check, go home. But then after I do it, I go, okay, I did that.
Yeah.
And you're fired up? I mean, do you have that high where it's hard to come down?
Oh, well, that is, It's
sometimes go ahead.
No, it's that funny thing. When I get off stage, my adrenaline's going, and I have that understanding too of then I'm by myself in the hotel, and I'm still got my adrenaline, and I understand why these performers want to do drugs afterwards
to keep the high going.
Yeah. Some do, yeah. But it's something about being in front of people. It's like it's freaky. Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Temptations. They were doing shows and they had hit records and stuff like that. But before they would go on stage, they would all hold hands and they would say a prayer.
Wow.
Because you never know. You never know what's going to happen when you get out there. It can be turned around on you.
Yeah, it's like the first show can be terrific, and then the second show horrible.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And I just want to get back to Winchell for a second, but he was a nice guy to work with.
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, when I got out here to California, because the reason I came out here was due to the Laugh In. The last season
right.
of Laugh In. But anyway, I had moved out here, and then somehow or another we hooked up. He was doing, he did a thing where he was going to do a thing where Paul, they're going to say, where are they now? Like Jerry Mahoney and the Knucklehead Smith, what are they doing now? And Knucklehead Smith was an executive for CBS.
That's a funny joke.
And Paul and Jerry Mahoney was something else. He was something else. But what happened was it was done on Sunset, some club on Sunset. But he had me as a guest, and I had a guest spot on there where we sat at the table, and they filmed this. They taped this. We sat at the table, and Lester would talk a little bit, blah, 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 that kind of situation. So it was made me feel good to know that this man, my mentor, took time out to put me in one of his movies.
Quite a journey that you're a kid watching him on TV, and now you're working with him all these years later.
Yeah, and he was nice. He was a nice man. Some people would say, because you probably run into this too, where some people will say things. You might know somebody, and somebody else will come up and say, I hate that. That guy's not. I don't like that guy. Or that guy doesn't like me. But it's basically you get along with him. But it's the idea you wonder what happened where this particular person doesn't like this particular person. But, that happens. And with me, another thing, too, I work with a lot of, Anne Margaret and... John Davison, Sammy Davis Jr., all those folks, I work with them. And I would always give them the space. Some people, when they're an opening act, they kind of bogart in on the headliner. I would stay away. because I didn't want them to be mad at me, or I didn't want to know if they had an other side. I didn't want to know the other side of them. Because one time we were working in Las Vegas, and I was working with Sammy Davis Jr. And back in those days, they didn't have TVs, the monitors where you can see the stage, see the acts on stage. They had just audio. You could hear the audio. You could hear that show in the dressing room from what was going on stage. Mm-hmm. So I would go back when he was on stage. When I come off, he'd go on stage. And then when I'd come off, I'd go and sit with his people in his dressing room. And then I knew it was the end of the show because he would do that Mr. Bojangles. Mr. Bojangles.
Sure,
that was his closer. So I knew he was coming back to the dressing room. So I would one night I was late because I was talking to somebody. I was late getting out before he got in there. So as I was getting ready to get up to go out, he was coming in. And as he was coming in, he was all sweaty from, being on stage and stuff. And as he walked in, he says, wait a minute. Where do you go? Where do you go? I said, well, Mr. Davis, I want to give you your space. He said, stick around, hang around. So, from then on,
nice.
I'd hang around. But, again, you've probably known some performers. They just want their space. They don't want to talk.
How did you like playing Vegas, Willie, when you were opening for Ann Margaret? And
Vegas was nice. Yeah. Vegas was a lot of entertainers say this, but Vegas was it was cool back in those days. I mean, it's good now, but back in those days, it wasn't as big as it is now. Like back in those days, you could get into the Riviera, you can come out of the Riviera Hotel, get in a taxi, drive down the strip to Caesars in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, you could do that, But now it's like, it's a different world.
Now, were there still mobsters there when you were working?
Oh, yeah. That was basically, it's not a secret or anything like that.
No. We ask all the performers we've had on the show who worked Vegas in those days what their relationship was with the mob, and if they got on.
Every performer has said to us, and others I've read about, they loved working for the mob. Mm-hmm. The treatment.
Oh, yeah. Because what happened was like in the dressing room, like I worked, some of the casinos that you worked, when you got there, your name was on the door. And the name was it was carved out of a particular kind of plastic. And people had to go out of the way to carve your name. It wasn't like a thing that was thrown together. And it was on the door. And what happened, one thing about Vegas, when I used to I got there the day of the show. I would always get there the day of the show, to do sound check and all that. Because your name, along with the headliner, would be on the marquee, Yeah. So when you come from the airport and you're driving into town, you look up and your name is on the marquee. But what I would do, I always wanted to try to get out of town before the last night of the show because I didn't want to see them taking my name off the marquee.
That's great.
Wow.
That's great.
But did you have dealings with the mobsters?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. A lot of nightclubs all over the place.
Well, you worked at Copa with the infamous Jules Podell.
Yeah, Jules Podell, yeah. I mean, the nightclubs were all over. In Detroit, there were a lot of nightclubs because they were the ones that could be able to get the liquor license and stuff like that, But it was like, it was cool. I mean, it was just a fun place to work. I mean, you never saw anything going down or anything to that particular kind of situation. But I remember one night I was working this particular club, and it was a Monday night, and they had a band there, and it was a little club in Detroit, and this woman was walking to the restroom, and evidently she had words with another woman sitting at a table, So when she went to the restroom, she came back out, and then they got into a fight, and then the men got into the fight. And then they got one guy who wouldn't stop, so they had to take the guy and put him out, take him outside. They took him outside and stuff like that. But they took him outside and locked the door. The guy broke the door down and came back in. And then
unbelievable.
Then they had to take him back out again. Then they finally called the Detroit police. The police came, stuff like that. And then I remember Joe. Joe was like the bartender. And Joe was, he was trying to show that he had things under control. And because they had a gun under the bar. and the gun went off by accident. It shot in the floor. It shot in the floor. But everybody went under the tables and everything like that. There was like a lot of excitement going on then, back in that particular night.
Weren't you in a club performing and you heard gunshots going off in a balcony?
No, that was we were working. There's a Motortown Review.
Oh, and it was in a theater.
It was in a Coliseum. It's called the Carter Barron.
Yeah, the Carter Barron. Was that in Philly?
No, it was in D.C. Yeah, it was old. It was a big, gigantic arena. And it was old, and the sound was bad. The sound was it was just a bad place to try to put on a show. You know, it was like. But for some reason or other, when we got there on the bus, we all got off the bus, came inside, we did sound check and everything like that. And doing the sound check, it was just the sound was just bad, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying to myself, this doesn't, something about this, it doesn't seem right. This place has got some bad vibe. It's bad, you know. So anyway, that night the show started, and then the Martha Reeves and the Vandella, and I still had that feeling, you know. And then the Martha
a bad feeling.
The band was up there, and Martha Reeves and Vandellas, they went up and they started doing their thing. Excuse me. And as they were doing their thing, you heard shots coming from way up high. Shots. Now Choker Campbell, he was the band leader back in those days. Now I'm backstage because it's not one of those. It's one of those stages that they put up with platforms, you know. Platform where you can stand under the stage, you can look up at the entertainers, but you're standing under the stage almost. But I'm watching the band, and I'm watching Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. The shots go off, and without any hesitation, Choker Campbell just stopped the band. He stopped the band. He grabbed his music charts and stuff like that. Without even looking, he just walked off the stage, and of course the band followed, and Martha Reeves and Vandellas followed, and that was the end of the show.
That was that.
Because you can't do a show with people shooting.
What did B.B. King call those clubs?
Bucket of Blood.
Bucket of Blood.
Wow.
Those are like the little small clubs. The small clubs.
Now, we jump around a lot here, but going back to the strip clubs, you said they were really strict, even though it was a strip club, really strict about doing dirty material.
Language, language. It was a very, very strict club. I mean, back then it was that way. Even the strippers couldn't nowadays. I guess what strippers they use the pole and stuff like that.
Oh, I wouldn't know, Willie.
Climbing up on the pole.
Yeah. Sure. Trust me, we know.
But it's like, but they didn't have a pole back then. But back then, the strippers had to wear pasties. You know, pasties.
Sure.
You know, pasties.
Yeah.
The little Band-Aids that they put on.
Right.
So, and they couldn't be nude. And nowadays, strip joints, I think they have. I haven't been to a strip joint, lately. But anyway, but it's they don't wear as many clothes as they did then. I remember one little club in Detroit. This little lady, she was French, and she would go on stage, and the stages used to be behind the bar. You know, whereas the people could sit at the bar and look at the stage. You know, and they had tables behind, all in the rest of the club. But what happened? This little lady, a little French lady, at the end of her show, her I don't know, her signature thing was when she finished, she would turn to the audience because she had this bikini on, and she would flip the bikini down, just flip it down and flip it back up. You know, that was the closer kind of situation. But one night, the Vice Squad was in the kitchen. They were in the kitchen. You can always tell the Vice Squad guys because they would wear suits. The guys, they would come in with suits. They would come in with suits on. I mean, and they were back there talking to the manager, and they were standing. They were standing in such a way where they could see the stage. You know, they could see the stage. And then she finished and she flipped the bottom, and then they went nuts. When she came off, and they had her in the back. They were talking to us, saying, "You shouldn't. You're not supposed to be doing that. Not be doing that kind of stuff. You're not supposed to be doing that kind of stuff." So that was back in the days when they did stuff like that.
Incredible.
I remember, like, there were a few strip clubs where they had a law, and the law was stated that the nipples have to be covered. So the strippers would take a little piece of saran wrap and cover it. So you could see the nipples, but legally...
What were yours covered with?
But it was a thing of legally, they said, has
Probably
to be covered. So
used
they were covered.
You probably use gaffer tape.
Yeah.
Were those mob-owned strip clubs, Willie? Because...
A lot of clubs were.
I mean, it's like what we had Tony Sandler here from Sandler and Young, and he was telling us, we found it interesting, too, that the mob wouldn't allow profanity. They had an issue.
Yeah.
They had an issue with profanity.
They could kill people, but
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
You couldn't. Matter of fact, the brass rail was. Oh boy, there was a guy who owned the brass rail. His father passed away, and he took over the club, and I cannot think of his name, but he wound up going to jail for insider trading. I can't think of his name. He was like, he was big. It was all over the states. Where this particular guy, Boski.
Ivan Boski.
Ivan Boski.
Yeah, that's a big name.
Ivan Boski, he owned the brass rail.
Wow. Yeah. There you go. Speaking of policing clubs, wasn't there a story about Sammy, somebody giving Sammy a hard time at Jules Podell's club at the Copa?
The Copa didn't have a stage. They had a little platform for the band, but the performer stood right on the level of the floor. And as you go back, they had little tiers there for the tables. But the performers, anyway, they had a noisy table there one night, and they were noisy. So what happened was, like, when the guys in the tuxedos would go over and say, "Can you hold it down, please, Mr. Davis? He's performing." Then they go back, and the people kept talking and talking and talking. They'd go back again, and they would say the same thing. And they did it so many times, and they had the bus boys come over and pick their table up. Because they were in a round table, big round table. They had them pick the table up, and they took the table out.
While they were sitting there, just remove their table.
So that means, when you're sitting there without a table, that means you're gonna leave.
Yeah,
you're gonna leave because why sit there, no drinks and facing each other.
And Jules Podell used to tap that ring right on the table.
He had a very big ring.
That big heavy ring. Yeah.
Yeah. He had the big. Well, what he would do, he would sit by, when he was there, he'd always sit by the cash register because it's the lady that did the cash register thing. But there's a little seat there. He would always sit right by her as the waiters and as the food came in and out. They had some nice food. The food was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. There was phenomenal food. It was a good venue to work.
The Copa.
You said that at one point you took up smoking. Because it seemed like the thing to do. Everyone around you was smoking.
What happened was I was in the Air Force. When I was in the Air Force, I started smoking. I went in the Air Force when I was 18. But what happened was, like, I started smoking in the service because everybody else was smoking. But I didn't really inhale, But what happened was, like, a scary time in New York. I was working the Copa, and I would smoke. Each night I'd go there, I'd smoke. I remember smoking cigarettes, and I would eat they had the food. I got a Chinese dinner, the Chinese food, shrimp fried rice, phenomenal, great, And I would drink rum and coke. I would drink, and then I stayed at a place called the President Hotel, 48th Street and 8th Avenue. That's
probably not there anymore.
No, that's probably it was across the street from Mama Leone's. Mama Leone's was right across the street.
We're not far from there right now.
And what happened was, like, one day I was walking down the street, and as I was walking down the street, I got dizzy. I got dizzy, and I said, "Oh no, not in New York. I can't fall. Can't pass out on the street in New York. No." And
somebody will roll you.
Yeah. And so that night I went and I didn't drink the rum and coke. I didn't eat the Chinese food, and I didn't smoke cigarettes. And then that first night that I did the shows, instead of back in those days, I used to stand up and put my foot up on a chair, and Lester would sit on my knee. And but I didn't want to feel dizzy on stage, so I sat down, and I brought the mic down, and I did the show for the next couple of days that way, till that dizziness thing went away. But it was like it was kind of freaky. It never came back, but it was just weird that something like that. But I did stop drinking rum and coke, and I stopped smoking. So, but I went back to the Chinese food, but it was good.
Didn't you say Lester had the big hair then? He had the afro, and you said he would come home smelling of smoke?
Yeah, it's like...
You couldn't get the smoke out of the doll?
No, because back in those days, in nightclubs, people smoked.
Yeah.
If people, if people would, and if people who didn't smoke had to sit in with all that smoke. And I would work some clubs didn't have ventilation. Only time they would vent the place was like when the show was over. They would open the doors, and the big doors or the fire doors, and let all the smoke out. But every night Lester would be there, and then the next day I'd be home. Then I maybe was changing his shirt or something like that. I'd open the case, and as I opened the case, all this smoke smell would come out because the smoke was in his hair. Yeah, from the club, from the environment.
By the way, Gil, a little trivia for you. Did you know Stu Gillum started as a ventriloquist?
Oh, wow.
I found that in my research.
Stu Gillum was a ventriloquist, and I found out. See, he was a very good actor.
Yeah, late Stu Gillum.
Yeah, what happened was like the reason why he went away from the ventriloquist thing because he had some dental work done, and somehow or another, see when it ain't he probably had to have it done. But sometimes people say when it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when he had that dental work done, something happened where he couldn't do that anymore.
Interesting.
So it's like that's why I'm very careful with particular things that people say to me. Well, you got to get this. Maybe get this. We'll put the implants in here.
You don't mess with it.
No.
Oh. You know what's funny to bring back? Like I remember when people smoked everywhere, and on planes, which was crazy because it's an enclosed space. Yeah. But you'd have smoking and non-smoking sections. So you'd be sitting across from someone smoking.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but the idea was the smoking was in the back. So if you were sitting in this no smoking zone up front, you're not in first class, but I mean up front, it was like the idea is like you get up to go to the restroom, and as you went to the restroom, you walked through all this cloud of smoke back there. It's amazing that people had fire in their hands up in the air with all that fuel.
Oh, insane!
The gasoline, all that fuel.
Looking back, Willie, go ahead, Gil.
I remember a story that. Well, did you ever work with Sherry Lewis?
Sherry Lewis. We did a thing with Sherry.
Was that Steve Allen thing?
Yeah, Vent-Event.
Yeah.
No. Was it? Yeah, the Vent-Event. It was done out here with Jay Johnson.
Jay Johnson from Soap. Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
The ventriloquist act.
Edgar Bergen was there. Jimmy Nelson, Danny O'Day.
Danny O'Day and Farfel.
And we did it at the Mayfair.
N-E-S-D-L-E-S.
Nestle. Oh, yeah. It is the very best chocolate. Yeah. And it was done at the Mayfair Theater here. In Santa Monica. It's no longer there. But it's like, that's where they did it. And at that particular time, when we were filming the HBO special, was it the Vent-Event? Yeah, the Vent-Event, yeah. When we were taping that, they were filming in Burbank, they were filming the movie Magic.
The Anthony Hopkins movie about ventriloquism.
And Margaret.
Right, and Margaret, sure.
And Burgess
Meredith. Very good.
Right.
Very good, Gil.
And,
and it was written by Stephen King.
No.
I think it was written by William Goldman.
Oh, William Goldman, yes.
William Goldman, yeah.
Yes,
William Goldman.
It was William Goldman.
Yeah. And what happened was like the night of the taping, when we had the audience there, when we were taping it, the producer of Magic, director of Magic.
Richard Attenborough.
Richard Attenborough, he came there. He was in the audience that night. I guess they wanted to come and see what ventriloquists did because they were doing a movie about a ventriloquist.
Yeah. That's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good, scary movie about ventriloquism.
And like the ventriloquist dummy is made to look like Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
So it makes it creepier.
Yeah. Like when they did The Twilight Zone, they did about 2 or 3 ventriloquist stories.
One with Mickey Rooney.
Oh, and the other with the guy from Spider-Man.
Cliff Robertson.
Cliff Robertson.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Mickey Rooney though. It was.
I think it was Mickey Rooney.
No,
wasn't it?
Am
I wrong?
I'm not
There's
sure.
definitely one with Cliff Robertson.
Mickey Rooney was in the one where he's a jockey and he wants to be big.
Oh gosh.
No, this is another guy. I can't think of it.
All right, we'll figure it out.
But what happened was like they had if you watch those movies, it's like that particular. They use the same character in all the movies. You know, when Cliff Robinson was.
Oh yes,
they had the same character.
Right.
They put him in storage, I guess. You know, and then pull him out of central casting when they came to ventriloquism again.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Dead of Night? With Michael Redgrave. There's another ventriloquist story.
Yeah, it was a black and white.
Black
movie
and white
from England.
Yes, that's a good one. I thought it was Mickey Rooney. I must be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not
no.
I remember.
I think it's the guy. The guy. Okay, Superman 1. The guy who ran the paper.
Oh, you are right. It's Jackie Cooper.
Yeah.
Wow.
You are right. Good man. Good man. Why did I think it was Mickey Rooney?
Was he talking in an Irish brogue?
No.
I remember there was one with a guy.
There were three movies, but I don't. Maybe not the ones we're talking about. But
they always use ventriloquism in horror stories.
Yes.
It always showed up in those horror anthologies. There's always a ventriloquism story.
Now,
an evil dummy.
What I remember about Shari Lewis, she said her father was a magician, and he would take her on the road with him. And there was actually his opening act was a black ventriloquist. And that guy, they'd sit by traveling together. He started teaching her as a little girl. He taught her ventriloquism.
And it led to lamb chop. Interesting.
The little sock, yeah. But there's a ventriloquist back in the turn of the century, back in the days of vaudeville. A black ventriloquist. He has several. I can't remember his name, but he has several characters. Where he had it. They were operated. They were all on some kind of a little platform where he could operate them all by just standing in one spot, kind of situation. But I can't remember his name, but it was good. Vaudeville was good days. Vaudeville.
Now here's something that's really strange to me, like. The same way we used to have mimics years ago, Frank Gorshin, Rich Little, Will Jordan, all those guys, George Kirby.
Yeah, so many. I love George Kirby.
Oh, yeah.
And
he did his Pearl Bailey.
The best.
My God.
The best.
He did all of the female.
Yes, on the copycats.
Yeah, he would do and he would do that... What Ella Fitzgerald
Sure.
he would do.
Well, you were saying it's a dying art, ventriloquism?
Yeah. Well, it's like, so ventriloquism and mimics and comedy teams, they all disappeared except for Vegas.
And magicians a little bit, too.
Yeah, magicians too.
Yeah.
In Vegas, they're still popular. But on regular TV, I grew up watching all of that.
So many.
Oh, yeah. On the Ed Sullivan Show, too.
Of course. Senior Wences. Well, weren't they telling you it was passé way back then, Willie? When you first started, they were telling you that ventriloquism was...
Well, again, when I was doing it, it was like people just wondered why I was doing something like that, because they were saying, why are you doing that? You know, that kind of situation. That's why a lot of you find some people who are really successful in business, what you have to do. If you listen to what everybody says, that can of course, deflate what you're trying to do. So what I would do is like you put blinders on. It's like blinders, and people saying stuff, negative stuff, and you let it bounce off.
Yeah, follow your bliss, man.
Because if you listen to that, you wouldn't get anywhere. That kind of situation.
The last place impressionists are appearing is on this podcast.
That's right.
We had Marilyn Michaels, Will Jordan, and Rich Little. They were all here.
Yes.
Cool.
On this show. And you are our first ventriloquist out of 200, Willie.
Oh, wow.
Out of 200 guests.
Wow.
And speaking of which, has Lester arrived yet?
I think...
has he checked in?
Yeah. I gotta. I'm gonna step out. I gotta get.
Yeah. See if you can bring a.
Wait a minute. I keep this on.
Out having a cup of coffee or what? Bring him in.
No. Wait. No. He's the doorknob. The doorknob is too high.
Lester is going to join us.
Okay. Oh, here he is. You okay? I'm okay. What's this? This is Mike. Can you guys see me?
Lester, we see you. How you doing?
I can't hear. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Willie's putting headphones on Lester now.
And Lester has a baseball.
He's got a baseball cap. I appreciate that you brought him his own headphones.
No, what are you doing, man? Hang on, you got an hour? Okay. Hang on a second, I got you.
Yeah, I just realized that he's putting headphones on Lester.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
There we go.
We got it. Fantastic. Lester, can you hear us now?
Huh? Oh, hey, say something.
Go ahead, Gil.
Yeah.
Hey, Gilbert.
Yes.
How you doing?
Hi. How are you, Lester?
Who else is there, Frank?
Yep, that's me.
How you doing?
How you doing, Lester?
I'm doing fine. I'm fine. I can hear you.
We had a question for you. You enjoy working with this guy all these years? Carrying him the way you have?
Yeah, he's cool. He's my right hand.
Willie, go ahead, Gil. You got a question for Lester?
Lester, do you remember the time that your partner, your heartless partner, threw you into a trunk and threw you on the ground?
Yeah, that's the story of my life. I was born in a suitcase, though. And then that group called Men at Work.
Yeah, Men at Work.
They did a song about me called Man in the Suitcase.
Really? I wish.
That's a true story, yeah, Man in the Suitcase.
We are keeping Edgar Bergen's spirit alive by doing ventriloquism on an audio medium.
Yeah,
the way he did it on radio.
That's good.
That was one of the things I noticed with Edgar Bergen. He was a ventriloquist on radio, which was like being a magician on radio.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see him on TV, I guess he was so used to radio, his mouth would be moving like crazy.
Well, I talked to him. When we talked about this particular back in radio, there were scripts. Bob Hope, everybody read scripts.
Yep.
Excuse me, but when you're doing radio, it's not like TV where you can see and hear. On radio, you could only hear. So he had to articulate. In other words, sometimes when ventriloquists say particular things, they don't say they don't say the boy went to the store. They say the boy went to the store. And on radio, if you're hearing the boy went to the store, I mean, it's like what the people listening say. What?
Oh, I see. That's interesting.
So he moved his lips. So all of those scripts, and he became popular and stuff like that. And so by the time television came along, it didn't really matter. He moved his lips, but it didn't matter because Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd, everybody loved them.
I love that.
I did not know that.
Lester, how old are you, by the way, now?
I don't know. Sony Olden and Count Nine Rings.
Is there a story, Lester, of Willie losing you or misplacing you, Lake Tahoe? Does that ring a bell?
It's Lake Tahoe, but there's another story. There's another story real quick because we're talking about New York. You guys in New York?
Yeah.
I'd gone someplace and I was taking a bus to come back. It was over in New Jersey or something, but I was taking a bus back to right down on 8th Avenue or something like that, where they had the bus station someplace near the post office or something like that. But anyway, I got to the bus station and I got out and my bag was underneath the bus. You put the bags under because it's a big bag. So I got out and I reached down to get my bag. I got the bag, I pulled it out, and I started walking with it And I looked at it, and it wasn't my bag. It looked like my bag, but it wasn't my bag. And Lester was in that bag. You didn't tell me that, man. No, wait. So, what happened was like a situation where I started to walk. I figured if I walk real fast, maybe I can find the person. Maybe I can find,
They just
Thank you.
put
Thank you.
the mic in front.
Yeah, you couldn't hear me.
Make sure we can hear Lester.
There you go. And so what happened was like I was going to go down the escalator, and a lady was coming up the escalator with the bag. She noticed that it was the wrong bag. So I was lucky enough that day to get my bag, and she got her bag back. But
imagine her surprise if she'd opened the bag.
I had it locked.
Oh, good.
When I'm in the suitcase, I put the lock on, that chain thing on. I got a chain thing on that inside.
Yeah, you need privacy.
Yeah, that's an inside story.
Could I ask the two of you, do you have some small bit from your act that you could do for us right now?
Let's see. I thought we were doing it. Now, what happens, what growing up and working those particular clubs we talked about doing,
yeah.
What we would do is like we would never have like the Apollo and places like that.
Yeah.
You couldn't do a prepared act. Like, for example, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, they did Who's On First?
All scripted, yeah.
Now, they're scripted, but when you've got hecklers and people like that, you couldn't do anything like that because you had to do little pieces of things. Because if you interrupted, you would ad lib and then come back to something else.
I see.
And so basically, that's what we would do. And the kids at the Apollo, some days when there wasn't like a lot of people in there, some kids they would let the audience stay in for the next show, And so if they would know your jokes, the second show they know your jokes, and they would jump on the punchlines before you would jump on the punchlines. So we would have always had to play a game with them.
Wow.
So you always had to be different.
Yeah. But I'll tell you something. I got something here. I went down to Florida. Yeah. When you go to the beach, I went to the beach, and you know what happens? You see those women in those bathing suits, and they move real fast with their booty. What is that called? That's called twerking. Twerking. Huh? Twerking. Oh, okay. Can't you say that? No, I can't say that. Why can't you say twerking? Because your lips will move. I'm just saying.
I love it.
Thank you much.
Now, Willie, can we get you to, or Lester actually, Lester? Can we get you to say the word fuck?
No.
He's not.
No.
He's not going to work blue for you.
Nope.
Can we throw some wild names at you guys, quick?
Go ahead.
You worked with Lola Falana,
Woo-wee.
Don Rickles, Charlie Callis,
Yeah.
Slappy White. Any of these names bring up an anecdote or a memory?
No, it's like Slappy White used to be Red Fox's comedy. They had a comedy team.
Sure.
Slappy White and Red Fox. Yeah.
And then Slappy White later teamed up with Steve Rossi.
He did.
Yeah, they tried to do they tried to
Briefly.
put the team back together.
Yeah.
I remember that. Oh yes, I remember it well. I can't sing too much because you got to pay for it.
Oh, and in the movie, did you have dealings with? Well, it had a great cast.
John Voight.
Yeah, and Bruce Stern and Jane Fonda.
Yeah, it's like that was done at Ranchos Los Amigos Hospital down in Downey.
Yeah,
that's where they did the hospital scenes. And John Voight, what he would do because he was on a gurney, all the way through the movie.
Yeah.
He would stay like we filmed during the week and stuff like that. He would even at nighttime. He would stay in the hospital. It was like a closed portion of the hospital that they never used. But he would stay in a little room there all the time. He filmed that. People would go home and stuff like that. He would stay in that little room in that hospital. I mean, it was like an area where nobody was. It was just a closed area.
Hell of a movie.
Stay there. Yeah.
So Willie, you're still out there. You're still. I mean, I saw you in Letterman a couple of years ago. You're still performing. Both of you guys.
Yeah, we're still doing it. Yeah.
Still doing it. Still fighting the good fight.
I remember the old days when I was in Old Town. I used to deal with the Four Tops before they got with Old Town. But when they got with Old Town, they had to change their name. Why did they change the name? What did they call it? When you were with them, what did they call you? What did you call yourselves? Four Tops and a Stick.
What's coming up, Willie? You got anything coming up you want to plug?
We're working on a documentary.
Oh, great!
The documentary on our lives, right? Right. We're working on that.
I was going to say you should write a book or make a documentary or something. You've done everything. You've been everywhere.
Yeah,
the documentary's going on.
That's great.
Now.
They interviewed me for your documentary.
Yeah.
Okay, last question I got. This is from one of our listeners, Willie. Mark Arnold wants to know: will you ever reissue your Motown LP, Hello Dummy?
Hello Dummy it's out there.
Is it out there?
Yeah, it's like I think they see them on iTunes and so. It's.
Oh, can people get it on iTunes?
Well, let's see. It's out there, or if it's not out there, it'll be out there soon because we're working on getting that together. And the Hello Dummy was done live at the Fox Theater in Detroit.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And did Don Rickles ever insult the two of you?
No, Don Rickles, he's my friend. I like Don Rickles. He's cool with me. You know what, Don Rickles, he's a really down-to-earth guy. You know, when cars would come and pick him up at the airport, the limos, he would sit up front. He would sit with the driver. He didn't want to sit. He never sat in the back. He never wanted.
Oh,
to
he didn't have a Star Trip.
Yeah. He sat with the driver.
I heard.
I like that.
I heard with Don Rickles, total opposite of his persona. He was just one of the most gentle and nice guys you'd ever meet.
Yeah, it's nice man. You know, it's almost like Sherman Hemsley, the character he played on the Jeffersons.
Yeah, George.
When we were doing the scenes and stuff like that. You know, he's boisterous and stuff like that. But then when we took time off and stuff, he'd go and sit in the corner. He's quiet.
Very quiet guy.
People go over and say hi. He said, "Hey, hi."
Did you ever work with Red Fox?
Red Fox, I work with. Red Fox, remember Red Fox? Yeah, Red Fox. He's cool. Yeah, I'll tell you a story.
Lester likes everybody.
Yeah, but Red Fox, he was, he was down to earth. And every time he would see me, he would always say, "Where's the dummy?" He would always say that. But the real, I might have told the story, but I was in Detroit. He was working a club in Detroit. He would always work a lot of jazz clubs. Where they had jazz groups and stuff. He would come and do his comedy there. So I saw in the paper where he was going to be at the Baker's Keyboard Lounge Jazz Club on 8 Mile in Detroit there. So what I would do, I went over and I went in. It's a little small room. The jazz group was playing. And then but the people in there that night, it was like one of those situations where they had a lot of people. When you got a lot of people who work together, sometimes the audience, you don't get their attention because they work together. So they're talking to each other because they haven't seen each other, and they work. So it was that kind of an audience that night. So the trio, they were finished, and then they introduced Red. Red came up and stood by the piano, and he lighted a cigarette, and he started doing his act. But the audience, they were boisterous, But he would keep going, and when he finished one cigarette, he'd light another cigarette, and he finished 3 cigarettes. So he timed his act with cigarettes.
Oh, interesting.
One cigarette.
Did you know that? That's cool.
Flip Wilson did the same thing.
Flip Wilson.
You time it. Once the cigarette is over, that's about 5 minutes. Anyway, he finished it. It wasn't like a situation where he would say, "Shut up." He didn't lose it. He just did it like he was just doing it like they weren't even there. And he finished his act. And he went out, and I saw him he had a Lincoln. I remember he got in his Lincoln and he drove away. But it's the idea. Remember the old saying, "The show must go on if you want to get paid."
That's Gilbert's motto.
Oh, yeah. Now, also, you were living in L.A., and you looked across the street, and you saw a sign come up, Comedy Store.
Yeah, back in 1972, I was out there. I was doing the Laugh-In, and then one night I came out of the Sunset Towers Hotel where I was staying, and I looked across the street, and there was a sign up there, you know, near the Hyatt House over there, and it was a comedy store. I said, wait a minute, that wasn't there last night. You know, anyway, I went over and
Sammy Shore.
Sammy Shore was at the door. You know, and he knew who I was. He said, Willie, we got this club going here. You know, if you want to come and do a set sometimes, you know, let us know, you know. So at that particular night, it was just open. And I could look in that little window, because you can look in the window, and I saw a guy on stage, but then there's about 6 people. There were 6 people in the audience that night. It was just beginning. It's just beginning to see where it's gone from then.
And
we just lost Mitzi.
Yeah,
she just passed.
And I think you said Mitzi loved Lester.
Mitzi would always talk to Lester. I got a picture. I'll probably put it on the internet someplace. But it's the picture of her in La Jolla at the La Jolla Comedy Club. She's holding Lester's her hand on Lester's cheek. But she always talked to Lester. Or when Lester wasn't around, she would always say, "Where is he? Where is he?" And she was good at names, because my brother would come to the Comedy Store with me sometimes, and she would, as she walked up and she'd see my brother, and she'd see me, and she says, "Hi, Willie. Hi, Willie's brother." And then she'd walk away.
She liked you, huh, Lester? Mitzi Shore?
Yeah, she's nice. She's a nice lady, yeah. She made me feel real. That was great.
Well,
comedy store.
Rest in peace, Mitzi.
Do you think Mitzi had good taste in that she liked you and wouldn't talk to your partner?
Yeah, because she thought I was funnier. She thought he should be a writer.
Okay.
What's
the name of the documentary, Willie? Does it have a name and a release date?
Working title now. Well,
okay.
Documentaries, we've been working on it. It's been in the works now for about 9 months. The documentary, we got to go. We got to go to Detroit, with the Motown things. We got to go. See, I was born in Alabama.
Yes.
I was born in a little town in Alabama called Red Level, and we've got to go down there.
Oh man, you're really doing deep diving on this one.
Yeah.
You're going everywhere.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah.
And Gilbert's in it.
We tried to go to where I was doing, the Black Forest.
The Black Forest.
Okay, this has been Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast with my co-host Frank Santopadre, and we've been talking to the Willie Tyler and the extremely talented Lester.
Thank you much. You know how to make a guy feel good. That's good.
Hey, you guys could take us out with a couple of bars of one of your songs? Could we impose on you?
You want to do that? How you gonna know if the roof leaks? If it never ever rains? How you gonna know if you got some smarts? If you don't use your drain? If you don't use your drain? You came from the town that was getting dry. Not a drop of water fell from the sky. People were saying all sorts of things. You didn't want to leave there. It was a life routine. Say, hey, how you gonna know if the roof leaks? If it never ever rains? How you gonna know if you got some smarts? If you don't use your drain? Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, Lester. That was wonderful.
No problem.
I wish we were a visual medium. Instead of a podcast.
Yeah.
We got some footage. Our engineer Frank Verderosa and Dara were taking some footage, so we'll share it with our fans.
So we've been talking to the ventriloquist who physically can't say fuck.
That's right.
The great Willie Tyler. Willie, thanks for this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.